I won't be covering the entire Ratchet and Clank franchise, there's like 15 of them at this point. Well, what kind of YouTuber would I be if I kept my word? That's right, in my never-ending quest to determine if old games are still good in the modern age, I'm now tackling Ratchet and Clank Going Commando, the first game on this channel that I've never actually played myself. So no nostalgia goggles this time, no tainting my opinion with fond memories of ignoring my responsibilities to fight virtual robots. I'm actually going into this blind. In this world of crazy guns, giant mech battles, and incompetent corporate leaders, truly anything could happen. Let's find out together if Ratchet and Clank No Underwear is still a good game. After a quick switch to widescreen, which I'm sure will cause issues on a cosmic scale later, but just feels better to look at, we are introduced to our heroes in a state of absolute boredom. They've saved the galaxy, and apparently nothing else has ever gone wrong. No one needs a hero here, so in order for the game to happen, they get yanked into another galaxy altogether by this bad hairline of a man. Fizzwidget is the CEO of Megacorp, the Bogon galaxy's equivalent to Gadgetron. A top-secret project has been stolen by some dastardly ne'er-do-well, and he needs us to get it back. Well, specifically, he needs Ratchet to do it. Clank gets to be an accountant, which he doesn't seem to mind. We skip over the training montage and head right into our first mission aboard a flying fortress. Gameplay means I, of course, need to talk first about controls. Nearly everything here is an upgrade from the first game. That tiny bit of momentum in the movement is gone, meaning there's no delay in a 180 turn. Walking, jumping, shooting, it all just feels snappier. The camera turns slower than I'd like, but it's nothing to really concern yourself about. Speaking of shooting, combat's gotten a massive overhaul in this game. What this really amounts to is the ability to strafe. This may not sound like much, but the difference this makes in combat simply cannot be overstated. We haven't quite made it to a full modern-day third-person shooter yet, but by George, we're getting somewhere. There's a much better feel in general to the combat. We still have the option of the wrench, but for a number of reasons, I never really used it, save for a few instances here and there. Guns are the focus, and they feel great. We start with two this time, a grenade launcher and a standard blaster. Both feel good and have their uses. The grenade launcher has very limited ammo, but wipes the floor with groups of enemies, while the blaster serves its purpose in mowing down foes from a greater distance. Having these two right from the get-go is a great way to teach the player both how to fight and when to choose the right tool for the job. There are a lot of fun weapons in this game, and I can't talk about all of them. From the starting blaster to an RC spider bomb to a weaponized stream of hot magma, they really do kind of go wild in this department. Each gun has a use, and I can't say I really found any to be objectively bad in any way. Some aren't as useful as others, but they all scratch some kind of itch in the back of my brain. There are some other changes that have been made to guns as well, but I'll get to that when it comes up. Moving and shooting our way through the ship, we find our quarry. It's been approximately 7 minutes since I pressed start on the main menu, so something tells me that we aren't going to win just yet.
I see it's time to update my security forces.
Yeah, there it is. Rather than take care of us here and now, the mysterious villain leaves it up to the henchmen robots, which we promptly blow to smithereens and move on. More shooting, a bit more jumping, and we dive out of here and into our ship to report our resounding success.
The thief escaped with the experiment, and I have no idea where he was headed.
Fizzwidget word vomits out some instructions. This leads us to a swamp world to track down the thief and stolen property. I break some boxes, interact with the local wildlife, and learn that the people demanding money to provide things we need to progress are indeed back in force, because of course they are. The overall economy of this game is a bit better than the first. We are given way more options to farm some bolts than before, but I still really dislike this as a design choice. Weapons and other upgrades are already expensive enough, and things like this just make it that much harder to unlock that next shiny gun. Something fun that happens here, which I was definitely not expecting despite how obvious it is on the UI, we get a health upgrade. See this little bar below our health? Killing enemies will fill that up, with theoretically more difficult enemies filling it up more. Each time it fills to max, we get a new pip on our health bar. This gets crazy as the game goes on, but enemies will do more damage to match it, so I honestly kind of felt I was lacking in defense towards the end. Some especially observant viewers, and those who played this game before I suppose, will have also noticed a suspiciously similar looking bar underneath the icon for our gun. If you guess that this means our guns can also level up, keep your mouth shut, I haven't gotten there yet. There, now I can talk about it. That's right, a turn of events no one could have known about before right this second. Each gun we acquire goes through wild evolution once enough destruction is committed in its name. These upgrades change the look and name of the weapon, and also provide some upgrades to the damage and functionality. This ranges from the blaster now firing at approximately the speed of an unattended child in a restaurant, to a rocket launcher going from 1 to 4 tubes of indiscriminate destruction. These upgrades are both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, they make each gun feel like it grows with you, at least to an extent, and getting a new toy to play with leaves you desperately waiting to find out what it changes into. On the other hand, each gun only upgrades once, and once it has, continuing to fight with it while still having unupgraded guns feels like kind of a waste. This leads to a constant mental battle of deciding whether to use that really fun weapon you just upgraded or switching to a weaker, sometimes less optimal weapon for the sake of seeing what it turns into. Overall, I don't dislike the system, I just wish it had been implemented in a bit of a better way. Anyway, FizzWidget lets us know that the experiment was last located at Maktar Resort, which just so happens to have a gladiatorial arena to take part in, so I'll head there next for some nice relaxing death matches. Clank gets kidnapped because we need him involved with the plot somehow, but we can deal with that later. We get intercepted and do take part in a quick space fight. This pops up only a few times, and I hated it every single time. The ship controls are fine in and of itself, but the size of the arenas and the number of enemies made these sections something I really just dislike on a personal level. Later on, you can upgrade the ship to make this easier, but I still just feel like it could have been scrapped without any negative repercussions. Finally, I can get back to the story, after this quick pit stop to take part in the gladiator games. This isn't optional, by the way, you do get a utility gadget at the end of the first round. Every round I did after that, however, was entirely optional and served nothing other than my endless bloodlust and thirst for more and more money for new weapons. Now back to the story. Ratchet learns of Clank's abduction and also watches him die, which doesn't really seem to faze him all that much, and we move on in search of our quarry. An excessive amount of wanton destruction later, and we leave on a mission to get our friend back. First though, I jog around on an artificial moon to turn off a few radars because, you know, priorities. Up next is the sprawling city of Megapolis to find Clank and loot his apartment. I force a robot to kill all his friends before dropping him into a pit of lava because evidently I've got severe problems, and hey, there's our old friend now. One quick minigame is all it takes to play God and revive Clank, who we then immediately take control over to get us out of this place. Clank gameplay is largely unchanged from the first game. He's still a little guy, so we move slower and can't jump quite as high. Where Ratchet and Clank 2 differs is in the number of little robot friends we get. Aside from just the standard death bots, we also get a bridge guy, a lifter, and this guy with a big hammer. These sections are few and far between. I think there might only be 2 in total. They're much less tedious than before and are a decent enough way to break up the gameplay. I guess I can't complain too much about that. Moving on, we raid Clank's apartment, finding our old grind boots, swing shot, and a reminder that the past just won't let me go, before leaving to go join a gang of space bikers with some serious emotional baggage. On our way there, I pick up a homing rocket, which I love, because the less I have to aim the better, and get trapped in an arena, which, I mean, it was a good effort, but I've got more explosives than your average army base, so maybe just let me pass. This lady sells some of the weapons from the first game, which is a nice touch for anyone wanting to get some of that old zest back, but I never ended up actually picking any of these up. The emotional bikers need us to win a race to prove we're good enough to proceed in the story, and this is much better than the hoverboard races from the first game. Sure, the handling could be a little better, but it makes sense for how fast you move, and at no point in any of these did I feel like I'd be outpaced by an especially quick slug. Race 1 in record time, and we get a sick hat to prove we're part of the gang. The Thug for Less boss sends out a message letting us know where we need to go next.
Don't worry. The boss only yells because he loves us.
Abusive parenting aside, we head off to the meeting point because, well, we've got no other place to go, so why not? First though, I need to unfreeze this Gadgetron employee and ruin his whole life to get a tool to freeze or unfreeze water depending on our needs. The Thug Rendezvous is another space fight, and I blast through that as fast as possible to avoid the mental strain, and we intercept a message that lets us know that we now need to head over to Canal City to hunt down the thief. Before that, we get a fun little docu-series about what happened to Captain Quark after the events of the first game. These are fun, and something you should keep in mind moving forward, as they will pop up from time to time. We end up missing the thief.
We always seem to be a bit late. Why is that?
which totally isn't my fault, but stick around anyway to see if we can find any clues. Fortunately, deep within the bowels of Megacorp's factory, we do find some dweeb robots willing to sell us our next plot point for the small price of 6,000 bolts. Money begrudgingly handed over, and we learn that this slapstick thief is hanging out on an ice planet with the experiment we're after. Maybe this time we'll get there in time. The ice planet is fine, but is where I'm going to mention that, with the much heavier focus on combat in this game, comes one of my least favorite things in most genres: swarms of enemies to simulate difficulty. Listen, I know that there are only so many ways to make a game difficult, but throwing obscene amounts of enemies at me so I can't tell what's happening at any given point in time just feels cheap. This happens a lot in Going Commando, and while it isn't the worst thing in the world, I really wish we would have seen more intricate enemy design to make each encounter challenging, rather than just swarms. I'm also going to use this planet to rant about bosses. Overall, the bosses in this game are a marked improvement over those in Ratchet and Clank 1. There is a lot more variety to them, and the refinements to combat make each boss more fun to fight in general. Most major bosses involve some level of spectacle or set piece, and even those that aren't major bosses are at least over fast enough that any shortcomings don't drag. There are two bosses in particular that I didn't like, but we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. We beat up the thief and get the experiment back. Fizzwidget gets a little too excited about this and asks us to meet him at a mining site of all places to turn it in. Upon arriving, he busts up our ship and promptly launches us into the desert, which I'm sure was just an accident. Ratchet still seems to trust him, which is a big turnaround from the last game, and now we have to escape through some caves. Kill some bugs with excessive firepower, find an upgrade to the trusty wrench to try and keep that tool relevant, and get accosted by the thief again. The thief, as it turns out, is a Lombax, and the experiment is actually a huge environmental disaster waiting to happen. So the good guy is a bad guy, and vice versa, which no one could ever have guessed. Also, I've played Rift Apart, and the presence of Angela just in general means that some serious retconning must have happened between this game and now to make a major plot point in the future even make sense. Anyway, this hippie man can fix our ship, but in order to do so, he needs us to get some crystals for him, which surely aren't some kind of weird space drug. We can't do anything else, so I guess we'll indulge this strange man.
Yes, the crystals are spiking to me with a single voice.
Well, at least he wasn't lying. The docu-series lets us know that Quark went to jail for selling a product known to give rashes in unsavory places, but escaped, which probably won't matter later. Off to planet Dabo to try and figure out what's up with the little blue Furby guy. As a quick little side quest, we can turn into Mega Clank to go fight another big robot on the moon, and this is another section that is only okay. The main problem I have with these sections is just how critically little damage every attack you have does to the enemy. I don't know if this is just to make it feel like a fight between equals or just to piss me off, but it definitely just feels like the latter. These pop up a few times, and each is largely the same. The best strategy I found each time was just to mash every button until the controller breaks and pray the enemy dies before you do. It works well enough. Math Monster here lets us know that now we can go to the Megacorp games as a reward, and we head into the factory. I completely disregard any attempt to sneak past the alarms because no one can notice if they're all dead, and make it to the end where we find out the experiment is super dangerous, but no one ever viewed this recording for some reason, so Fizzwidget must not know. We try to let him know, but he's distracted with a Starbucks order, so when we go to meet him at the Deep Space Disposal Facility, my confidence that he knows what's going on isn't super high. The password he gave us to turn off the defenses is wrong, surely just a mistake made by the addled brain of an old man, so we have to fight the turrets in yet another space fight. Fizzwidget also isn't here, so we go to meet him at a weapons facility. I interrupt the tour by blowing up all the guests, decide trying to blow up a giant missile with a wrench isn't the best idea, and work my way inside. All the Megacorp robots are hostile to us, which is another thing we probably shouldn't worry about, and once we've infiltrated deep enough inside, we get a communication from Angela letting us know that her hired thugs have turned against her. She lets us know where Fizzwidget is, so now we head off there because Ratchet and Clank still believe this dude is worth trying to communicate with. We learn that Megacorp themselves hire the thugs for less guys, definitely not suspicious, and glide our way through some oncoming traffic to try and find the old codger for a heart-to-heart. An incalculable amount of needless property damage later, and Fizzwidget is of course not here. Instead, we meet his robot and are accused of trying to kill the real guy because the only witnesses are the hired goons that take us prisoner. We immediately break out of this maximum security, high-tech prison with the help of Clank's girlfriend and some conveniently placed microbots before taking control over Ratchet again for some good old-fashioned blasting and platforming. All in all, not the most secure prison I've ever seen. They didn't even take our arsenal of weapons away. Angela lets us witness her get taken prisoner, so we need to go rescue her to figure out where where the script needs us to go next. One quick glide over lava and we meet up with our old plumber friend for some meta commentary, and he gives us a Quark action figure that I will never ever remember to give to the nerd who wants it. Off to planet Gorn to rescue Angela and blow up some more ships in a dogfight. Angela wasn't here, but we intercept a message from the thugs with some super secret planetary coordinates hidden on a screen in the background, so we'll head for that. More robot blasting and even a bit of grind boot action later, and hey, remember those bosses I said we'll talk about when we get to them? Well, we're at one, and I've got some words to say. You want to know how long it took me to beat this giant mech? 2 hours. 2 full hours spent unloading everything I had on this guy. I shot at his feet, I used the turrets, I even looked online because I was certain there was something I'd missed. But nope, this guy just sucks. He's not even challenging. This is an agonizing war of attrition between myself, this stupid robot, and my inevitable demise of old age. This fight pissed me off so much I took a real-world break from this game for several days. I did finally beat him, and we got Angela back, so the characters can chat it out for a bit while I go scream into the night and pretend I'll ever get that time back. Anyway, we learn of a distribution center stocked with a truly absurd number of proto-pets, so we head there to try and do something about that. What we're going to do, I have no idea. I'm still reeling from that boss fight, but I'll do as the game dictates because I have nothing else to do. Oh, and we do get the conclusion to Quark's adventures. He's missing.
Well, no more Quark.
I promise that totally won't matter very shortly. The distribution center is fine. We do some fun jumps, kill some mutated two-headed crab things, meet one crab that thinks he's better than everyone else, and I'm genuinely not sure what we accomplished here. Does anyone know? Please tell me, I'm losing my mind over here. Anyway, Angela is in danger and needs our help again because of course she does. First though, I head off to a city filled with robots currently overrun with proto-pets to save the day because machine lives are lives too and we can't let them all get destroyed. This whole planet serves literally no story purpose other than to waste time and get a piece of a gadget I'll need like 3 times after this, so moving on. On the planet where Angela is trapped, the Crystals Man is back. The stone addiction has taken over and now he needs moonstones to feed his habit. Break the rocks, kill some yetis, get jump scared by giant ice dragons, and give him the rocks he so desperately craves. From him, I get the last piece of a hypnomatic, so Jeff Dunham here makes it for me, so now I can finally go save Angela after using a robot to kill more of his own friends of course, because psychopathy is a must for any action game. We rescue Angela and she gives us the location of the Megacorp headquarters, so we can finally go and put a stop to the attack of the Twonkies. Of all the references I've made on this channel, why do I feel like that's the most obscure yet? Before we go to the end of this game and learn the big reveal, I want to talk about the story overall. I complained a lot about the direction in Ratchet and Clank 1. I felt that it felt a lot like just meandering around until the plot happened. This problem is fixed a lot in Going Commando. Very rarely, if ever, did I feel like I was going somewhere just for the sake of it. Almost always the player is given a reason to go somewhere that directly ties to the main plot. Is the tie always good? No, but at least the connection is there. This may not be the best story to ever exist, but I've definitely seen worse, and seeing Ratchet evolve from just some guy on an adventure to a hero in full feels good. So now the big twist. Remember Quark, how he disappeared? Well, I lied. I fooled you all, and he's actually the main villain. I deeply apologize for this deception. Turns out he's been impersonating Fizzwidget this entire time and plans on using the Protopet disaster to save the day, frame Ratchet and Clank, and form a new fanbase in the Bogon galaxy. This all immediately falls apart because Quark is an idiot. The Protopet grows to massive scale, eats Quark, and now we get what might be the most disappointing final boss I've seen in a very long time. This boss suffers from 2 big issues. It isn't difficult, and it's butt ugly. The Protopet has like 3 attacks, one of which is just rolling at you slower than my dead grandmother drives, and the vast majority of time spent in this fight is just waiting on it while it does absolutely nothing to stop us. I can't even think of any ways to make this fight better. It needs to just go in the trash. This fight is so offensively bad, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Just watch this. So we kill it, thankfully, and it spits Quark out along with the device we can use to neutralize the threat of every other Protopet in the galaxy. Clank's girlfriend is decapitated and he's sad about that, but Ratchet promises he can fix it. Wait, that's it? That's how this game ends? Yeah, sure, there's some mid-credit scenes of a happily ever after for everyone. Quark gets hit with the good old nut twister. But really, yeah, that's the end. What a disappointing way to end this game. So going Commando, is it still good? Well, right up until the end there, yeah, this is still a great game. I'd say that the last 3 hours or so does kind of drag with the enemies being just too plentiful and doing too much damage, but overall this is a stellar experience. It takes everything good about the first game, from the story to the gameplay, and makes it better in just the right ways to deliver an exceptional experience. I absolutely recommend going Commando as a title to play in 2023. As always, let me know what you think. I love reading the comments and do look at every single one. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more, feel free to subscribe. I'm not covering every single Ratchet and Clank game, I did mean that, but I have decided to do the first 3, so keep an eye out for that as Up Your Arsenal is next in line.